Narcissist, narcissism, bad relationships.
I think I can fix him, or I think I can take care of him, or he seems so broken. You can't do that.
Rebecca Zung is a top 1% trial lawyer, a best-selling author, and is known worldwide as the Narcissist Slayer.
Rebecca Zung has helped millions outsmart manipulators, shut down gaslighters, and break free from toxic control.
If you have a narcissist in your life, she says it's time to stop playing nice.
They want you sucked in, dragged in, locked in as quickly as possible. And that's the scary part.
Take your power back, starting now. Narcissist, narcissism, bad relationships. Rebecca, thanks for being my guest.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, so you have to help me out here. I hear the word narcissist all the time, especially in the media when they talk about Trump or somebody else. What is a narcissist? What is the real definition? Because people don't even know what it means.
Mm-hmm. So this is a person who experienced trauma as a child. This is a person who actually has damage to their limbic system. And so I like to think of it as a person, there's actually narcissistic personality disorder, which is all the way at the end of the spectrum. It's really a spectrum. It's a scope. It's a person, all of us kind of have some kind of narcissistic traits and tendencies, really. And so you kind of have to be careful about how you use the word, in a sense, because narcissistic personality is actually a diagnosis that can really only be done by people who are trained to make that diagnosis, which is not me. But a narcissist is, a narcissistic person might have these traits or tendencies, and so that word gets thrown around quite a bit. But I will say that according to experts, the narcissistic personality has risen 30%.
But what is a narcissistic personality?
So this is a person who feels totally and completely empty inside. This is a person who needs validation from external sources in order to try to feel whole, to try to feel like they feel anything, and all from external sources. They don't feel at all whole inside. They feel totally and completely empty inside. And so they try to get all of their validation from external sources.
Isn't that most people?
And no, most people have some sense of groundedness, of wholeness, of who they are internally. And so this person feels this black hole, this total emptiness inside of them, and they try to fill it with external sources, and those external sources is called narcissistic supply.
So this is every actor and actress in Hollywood, then, because they need applause, they need the Academy Award, they need recognition.
So I call narcissistic supply. There's really two sources. It's because it's what I call diamond level supply and coal level supply. So diamond level supply is what I call the image aspect of things. So image could be anything from, the good house, the correct friends, the money, the power. That's what's seen on the outside of things. The coal level supply, what I call coal level supply, is sort of like the dark underbelly of narcissistic supply, and that's the manipulation aspect of things. That's the pushing other people down to make themselves feel good. And so that might be controlling people. That might be actually, it's almost like the sadistic side of narcissistic supply. It's the side they don't necessarily show other people, but it remains, it's almost like the side that that it won't let other people go. And so when you're negotiating, which is, where I come in a lot of times, it's the side that goes, why won't they let me go in this deal? Why do they continually move goalposts? I thought they just wanted to win, but it's not just the winning. It's the constantly moving goalposts in the deal. It's that manipulation aspect of things. It's the sadistic side of things.
Isn't that just tough negotiating?
Not necessarily, because tough negotiating could be, hey, I want to get what I want. But this is the side of things that actually, where they sometimes self-destruct. And the reason why is because their limbic system actually takes over and shuts down the cortex part of their brain. So when they get triggered, which is when they feel that they are in defensive mode. So what happens is with all of us, when we go into fight or flight, we are then triggered. And so our limbic brain then takes over, that emotional part of our brain, which is like the center part of our brain. And so and let me go back to childhood again. So when we were children, all of us, when we're in fight or flight, adrenaline and cortisol takes over, right? And when that happens on a regular and continuous basis as children, that cortisol can actually cause arrested development in the limbic part of the brain. And so as we grow up, while the cortex part of the brain, which is the front part of the brain, can continue to develop normally, that middle part of the brain, the limbic part of the brain, can actually become hypersensitive. So what happens is, as adults, is that the narcissistic personality disordered person is actually hypersensitive. So what happens is they become triggered more easily. So a regular reasonable person may not be triggered by that particular eye roll, that tone of voice, that thing that they think they're now going to be exposed. They think that they're now going to lose power, lose control. And so then when that thing happens, that limbic part of their brain takes over, and now that cortex part of their brain is shut down. And now you're only dealing with that. You're only dealing with full raw emotion. And it's called narcissistic injury. You may have heard that term before.
No.
And now, okay, so they have this thing called narcissistic injury. And now you're fully dealing with this narcissistic rage and during this, what they call the discard phase, that's when you'll see the birth of the smear campaign. You'll see the birth of this person who's in full emotion state. And that's why you're not dealing with somebody who's rational during that period of time. And they will actually self-sabotage during this period of time. And I will tell you, as a matrimonial lawyer, when I was practicing, and I only practiced at a very high level, I represented very, very powerful people during my practice. I didn't even understand this. I would be thinking, why the hell is this dude willing to go, I will, burn my business to the ground so that I don't have to pay this person alimony? And I think, why the hell would you do that? That's just stupid. But that's what these people would do, because they're not thinking from a place of rational. They're thinking from a place of emotion. But, they will self-sabotage just to take other people down. And that's the scary part. That's the scary part. And I'm sure you've seen it too. but they're not thinking, in long-term impact. They're only thinking from emotion at that point.
All right, so let's go back. Let's go back. I'm dealing with the person here. What are the symptoms or what are the traits of this person that would classify this person as a narcissist?
They start off in a love bombing state. You're the most amazing person they've ever met. They usually want to move the relationship along very quickly. It's passionate. You're the most incredible. We are, and it doesn't have to be romantic. In a business situation, it's usually that way too. It's we should be business partners. Let's sign the contract. I had a business partner who was who happened to be a covert passive aggressive narcissist, and it was the same thing. I can bring you all the contacts. I can, I know people. We should become business partners. It seemed almost too good to be true, and that's how it ends up. And so they move the relationship to the next level as quickly as possible to lock you in. And they're usually very charismatic, extremely bright, and very good at getting you locked in and to that next level as quickly as possible, because they want you sucked in, dragged in, locked in as quickly as possible. And then once you're there, they get you to do a lot of the work and do a lot of the things for you, and then try to take credit for the work and try to take credit for things. And then, because once you're in that thing, it's a lot of empty promises, a lot of hope. They keep you alive on hope. They string you along. And then it's a lot of smoke and mirrors, because you get to see these red flags that it wasn't as much as what you thought it was going to be, because then it becomes a very quickly abusive type of relationship where most of it just evaporates into an illusory type of relationship, where it's now hot, cold, push, pull, push, pull, push, pull.
But what if you're the person that's delusional, and you're calling this poor guy, because it seems that men are most of the narcissists are men?
That's definitely not true.
Okay, so whether you're a man or a woman, you're looking at this person, and now you're blaming them, and it's like you have victim mentality. What if it's you? Is it always the other person? I mean, what if you're the delusional person and you're blaming this person and call them narcissist, but actually you're the asshole, and you're the whacked out person, and you're the insane one, and you're the delusional one? Does that ever happen?
I mean, I would always say that people have to be, you always want to take responsibility for your side of things. And many times when people come into my programs, my coaching program, my resources, you do have to take 100% responsibility for your side of things, even if you were the victim of somebody who was toxic or whatever, because there's always two sides to every story, and being in victim mentality is never good for anybody. And so taking, even if you were the person who was in the relationship with somebody who's toxic, there's still, an aspect of it that you have to take responsibility for, right? Which is, how much of that did you allow? How much of that was something that, and I don't want to say, hey, it's your fault, or you were, whatever. But there's always some piece of it. The other side of that is, if you are going to take agency in your life, you have to say, where can I clean up the areas that I'm out of integrity?
Okay. Will Rogers, does that name ring a bell?
It does, but
A little bit. Okay, yeah, I'm older than you, so that's a name that I ring a bell. So Will Rogers was a famous person who's a cowboy, very well known back in the day, and he was famous for saying, "I never met a man I didn't like."
Yeah.
So when you asked Will Rogers, "Have you ever met a narcissist?" he said, "I never met a man." When he said man, a person, but back then it was man. "I never met a person I didn't like." So how is it that some people like Will Rogers never met a person they didn't like, and then you have other people who constantly find people that they point the finger at and saying, toxic, narcissist, jerk, et cetera, et cetera?
Mm-hmm.
Is maybe they're attracting that into their life?
Well, I will say that sometimes people end up with people who were, it's maybe their parents were narcissists, and they end up kind of repeating patterns or something like that. Not to say that they like that or whatever. It's just, I think sometimes people end up repeating patterns in their life. And, I think sometimes people think, oh, I can fix that person or whatever. I will say also, like, as a divorce attorney, I used to sort of almost it's not funny, or it's almost like ironic. Ironic's a better word, where I would say, like, the thing that attracted the person in the first place was the thing that ended up being the reason they got divorced. It was almost like, oh, I love this person, this guy, he's so, like, he takes charge at the beginning. And then at the end, it was like, oh, I hate him, he's so controlling. Or at the beginning, it's like, I love her, she's so crazy, or at the end, I hate her, she's so crazy. It's like, you just have to be careful about what you're attracted to at the beginning, right? Or, like the fact that, maybe this person seems comfortable because I think I can fix him, or I think I can take care of him, or he seems so broken, and I'm gonna, help him or whatever. It's like, you can't do that, like, if a person is that way, that's who they are, and
the great spirit, one of the great spiritual gurus, Swami Muktananda, was famous for saying, if you want to fix something in someone else, that means there's something in you that you need to fix first.
Yeah.
What's your comment about that?
I definitely think that. And I think that sometimes we do get attracted to people because we think, like, we didn't end up getting enough love in our childhoods or whatever, and we think, like, if this person loves us, that's we're going to be healed in that. And I think a lot of times we have our own trauma in childhood, and we need to heal that in ourselves. Our own traumas don't get healed in our relationships, and I always say we kind of bring four people into in our relationships. It's almost like our true selves and our trauma selves, and it's like those four things all come together. And if you don't heal those trauma cells are definitely going to lead the way. And so you have to, you can't let those trauma cells do the talking, or do the picking in your lives.
Yeah. Now clearly people are in relationships that aren't good and healthy. We know that. And maybe there's one person who's at fault. And look, we all know the extreme where there's a relationship and there's one person who's physically abusive, whether it's the male most of the time, hitting the woman, or in some cases, the woman hitting the guy. And there's some type of physical abuse. And then the woman, a lot of times, stays with it. I was watching some old Adam 12 TV shows. You're much younger, so you probably don't remember that show, but it was about the LA Police Department. And they were true stories. They would go in and the woman would be beaten, and the guy would say, "There's no problem here." And the woman would say, "There's no problem here." And the cops left, and they know what happened, but they said, "There's nothing we can do. The law doesn't allow us to do anything." Back then, that was the case. So we know things like that exist. So if somebody is in a relationship that is unhealthy, they determine, look, I know I'm in an unhealthy relationship, but for some reason I'm kind of stuck here, or I can't let go, or whatever. What's the solution? What should they do?
I mean, I think that they need to really take a look at themselves and decide, why do they want to be in a relationship when this other person really doesn't want to be with them? And that's what I used to say to people when I was, practicing law. What's going to change if they don't change it? And if they have kids, is this the kind of role model that they want to have for their children? Do they want their children to grow up like this? Nobody's coming to save them. This is a conversation that we have every day with my sales team. My sales team, basically, I have to train them to be coaches, basically, and how to coach them out of this, and how to, have decisions like, what's going to change today if you don't change it? What's going to be different in 6 months if you don't change it? And make a decision that today's the day to transform yourself.
Okay, so let's go back to kind of the telltale signs of a narcissist. And man, putting a label on, especially when it comes out of the psychiatric manual, is really kind of because the manual is this thick. You've seen it, right? The psychiatric manual. And,
I'm actually going to challenge you and say, what difference does it make if they're a narcissist or not? Because, what's your day-to-day life look like?
Exactly. If you're not unhappy, and whether the person's a jerk or whether you're just unhappy with it, whether you want to label them a narcissist,
or they're an asshole, or they're whatever.
You don't like it anymore, get out of the relationship, right? Move on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Who cares?
And look at yourself and saying, hey, what did I do to attract this person? What's in me that I can maybe work on to get into a better, healthier situation? But I'm curious because the
vibrational level, because I've listened to your Wish Is Your Command, series, and from a vibrational level, what do you want to attract into your life, and does this make your life feel better? Do you feel good in this on a day-to-day basis? And because if you don't, what do you want from your life? And this ain't it. And what's going to change if you don't change it?
Right.
So who the hell cares if they're a narcissist or they're just an asshole or whatever?
Exactly. But I'm very curious because this word is being thrown around so much, like misogynist, narcissist. I mean, people throw around words, and when I ask people, when they use the word, what's the definition of that? They look at me like, I don't know. I heard it on the news, so I guess I'm going to use it. But if you look at a person, this narcissist, would you say one of the tales is they have kind of a grandiose opinion of themselves? Is that one?
Yes, but I'm gonna just say, that's the dangerous thing, because there are also covert narcissists, and covert narcissists actually, to the rest of the world, they seem kind and sweet and almost victim-y, and very passive aggressive. They could be very humble, and so a lot of people think, well, maybe they're not a narcissist, and so that's the danger of it, because I was in a business partnership with a woman who turned out to be a covert passive aggressive narcissist. And I didn't even know she was a narcissist. I mean, I never even heard that. I didn't know women could be narcissists. I thought narcissists were all like big misogynistic men who were like, kind of filled the room and demanded the best tables in restaurants and all of that. Like that's what I thought a narcissist was until somebody told me that, this person was a narcissist and recommended a book to me. And I was on an airplane, like reading this book, this covert passive aggressive narcissist book. And I'm like, oh my God, this is definitely what this woman is. Oh my God. My husband was like, oh my God, he was like shushing me on the airplane. And I couldn't believe it. But that's exactly what this person was. And so, I would just caution people to just say that, women can definitely be narcissists too. And men can be covert narcissists as well. So, it's not always the package that you think. And that's the thing that, keeps people stuck because they think, oh, nobody's going to believe me. They're going to all think that I'm the crazy one. And what covert narcissists do is they actually start smearing people like long before the discard phase, like in terms of care, like, oh, I'm so concerned about Susie and her drinking, I'm just worried. I'm just worried about her. She's just drinking too much,
Or maybe that's true. maybe she's a lush.
Well, maybe, or maybe they're just like trying to drop little pearls along the way because then, by the time the divorce happens, well, Susie's an alcoholic,
Yeah.
shouldn't have the kids now, but but they were just like smearing Susie ahead of time
All
just
right,
so that
when I was younger, and again, I'm going to point out our great age difference. I'm much older than you. You're a very young woman. In my day, there was no such thing as a narcissist, but we had guys mostly, although there were some women, that we would call egomaniacs. Is that
Okay.
similar?
probably.
This guy's an egomaniac.
I mean, when I first started practicing law, nobody ever used the word narcissist. It was just, all the husbands were controlling and all the wives were crazy. I mean, that's what they would say,
So in divorces, guys are always controlling and wives are always crazy.
That's what they used to say. Now everybody's a narcissist.
Now,
But, I don't
okay. So I'm saying,
anymore.
okay.
I don't,
Fair enough. So now we have a new term to use. There was another thing that we talked about. There was guys who, and again women, that were very needy. They needed, as you pointed out right at the beginning of the show, they needed attention. They needed accolades. They needed praise. It was something that they craved more than anything. And this is an amazing motivator and has been used throughout history. Recognition, giving somebody a plaque, giving somebody an award. When we were in Cub Scouts, Boy Scouts, Little League, Pop Warner football, we got trophies. And we went to that awards banquet, we're in the bowling league, and we wanted that trophy and we wanted to go on stage. And we all were just lit up like Christmas trees when we got on stage and got our trophy or got our diploma. We all craved recognition. We all wanted to get the star on our forehead from the teacher. Now, clearly, we're not all narcissists just because we all crave recognition and we want to get, recognized in front of everybody and applauded.
All humans want validation. I mean, that's part of being human. All humans want to feel seen, heard, and know that they matter. That's part of being a human.
Now, you talked about the trauma. This is very interesting to me. Clearly, there's some scientific medical research, maybe some neuroscience on the brain that shows what you described about trauma and the cortex, and all these different things. And this is a significant aspect of this, correct?
Yes.
So it kind of shows how it's happening and why it's happening.
Yes.
So if a
Yeah.
person is in that scenario,
Yeah.
are they screwed, or is there a way out? I mean, let's say this poor guy is watching right now and he actually comes to the conclusion, that's me. I got this problem. I've had relationships. It's all gone sour. It's what they're describing. Man,
Yeah.
I must have this issue. I have uncontrollable and irrational emotions that get triggered or keyed in, and
Yeah.
I do stupid things. As you pointed out, I'll burn my business down rather than pay the alimony. That's an
Yeah.
irrational, uncontrollable feeling that they can't
Yeah.
can't get a handle of. Is there a way out?
Well, I mean,
Don't say no.
If that's the person, well, if they want help, they should get help, right? But, most people are not self-aware. Those people are not self-aware. They don't try to get help.
So they're stuck in that situation.
They think it's everybody else, I mean, do they go out? These are not the guys that go, you know what? I'm going to go get 15 medicine journeys to try to get help for myself. No.
So what you're suggesting then, and I think it's actually pretty good advice. Actually, I think it's very good advice. Is if a person is in a relationship where they say this person, whatever you want to call them, egomaniac, jerk, asshole, narcissist, whatever, number one, don't think you can fix them or change them. Get out of that relationship and look at yourself and ask, why did I create this? What did I do to attract this? And how can I change myself first? Would that be a good recipe?
No, I think that's a great solution.
Now, people who are watching, and you said it, you didn't think women could be narcissists, only men.
I didn't say that. I didn't say that.
Initially, you said, until you read that book.
Oh, yeah, that's what I thought.
Right. And okay, then you said, okay, it could be anybody.
Yeah.
But generally, is it fair to say that more men exhibit narcissistic behaviors than women, based on your experience? And you've seen a lot.
No. Yeah, I mean, I think it's both.
And if a person is in a relationship with that individual, whether it's a male or female in a relationship, what do you think they did that got them attracted to that person? Or are those traits and tendencies not exhibited at all in the beginning of a relationship?
I think that people who feel a sense of they had their own traumas in childhood. They feel a sense of their own need for love, their own need for their own validation, because that narcissist comes along and fills that, because they come along normally with this, oh, you are just incredible. They have this, that narcissists do have a sense of finding people who have a certain amount of brokenness, or
Do they do that consciously, Rebecca, or they do that subconsciously?
I don't know if it's
I mean, they can't be that evil that they're looking for somebody who's vulnerable.
I don't know if it's consciousness, but they do see the vulnerability in people. They do see a vulnerability. They see it. And, whether it's conscious or not, it's hard for me to say. But there is an attraction. It's almost like a fatal attraction between almost like an empath and a narcissist.
Deepak Chopra. Are you familiar with Deepak?
Yes.
Okay, so Deepak,
Yeah.
I know, we've spoken together, we've done shows together. His son did a documentary on Deepak Chopra. The documentary was not very nice to Deepak Chopra. The son and
No.
Deepak were estranged.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, and so the son did this really scathing documentary on Deepak Chopra.
Oh.
A newspaper reporter asked Deepak, your son did this scathing, very negative documentary about you. How do you respond? And Deepak said, he didn't do a documentary about me. He did a documentary about himself.
No.
And the point Deepak was pointing out is what you see in others is really what is in you.
Mm-hmm.
If a person is saying constantly, and I've met people, and I've read some well-known authors, and as I'm reading their book on love, they're talking about this guy asshole, and they're pointing out all the relationships that they've had and all the narcissists that they've been involved with, pointing the finger at the other ones, not noting that 3 fingers are pointing directly at themselves.
Yeah, I've seen that.
But would you say, and again, you have more experience than anyone out there on this subject, really, and especially with all the divorces you've dealt with, when a person is pointing the finger at the husband or the wife saying they're controlling, they're crazy, they're a narcissist, they're egomaniac, whatever, and you just said it, there's something in themselves that is also at issue. Is that fair?
Oh, yeah. I'm reading a book right now. It's really fascinating, but, one of the quotes from it, and I don't even know if it's their quote or it's somebody else's quote, but it's, you don't see the world as it is. You see the world as you are.
Mm-hmm. It's a great quote, very, very famous quote.
Yeah.
I think that really hits the nail on the head. But let's go back to the fact that there are people, both men and women, in relationships, and it could be a romantic relationship, as you pointed out, but also a business relationship that isn't making you happy, that you wake up and you're stressed out or have anxiety about the relationship, whether it's a business or personal relationship, friendship, romantic relationship, or whatever. And you can say there's a lot of reasons why, but the fact is it's not healthy for you. You can't change that person. You really need to get out of that relationship and disconnect from that person. Is that fair?
Mm-hmm.
Is that a good plan?
Yeah. Yeah, of course. Of course. And, I always say that narcissists don't attach themselves to you because you have so little value. They attach themselves to you because you have so much value. I mean, because, people, while they're constantly devaluing you, they wouldn't devalue something that has so little value. What would be the point in that? I mean, think about it. Like if you were the Kmart blue light special, what would be the point of that? Right. I mean, so, it's soul sucking. It's soul sucking. It's not going to get any better. So you have to get out of it. You have to.
Have you seen, and again, you have coaches, you work with people in relationships, you've dealt with a lot of divorces.
Yeah, I certify coaches in my business now. So I certify coaches, I do corporate training, I have a community, I have a large subscription community. So it's my business now.
And you help a person who was in one of these, we'll call it a toxic relationship. Fair enough? Call it a toxic relationship. And
right.
who comes out of that, but that person needs some healing. Yes?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what you and some of your coaches do. They actually help that person work on themselves so that the next business, friendship, personal relationship, romantic relationship is not going to be a repeat of what's happened before.
Right. Exactly. Exactly.
And unless they fix themselves, have you seen that people repeat that same relationship over and over again, just with a different person?
Yeah, 100% they're going to.
Yeah, so they got to really fix themselves first. Rebecca, it is a fascinating topic because narcissist and also misogyny are like 2 big buzzwords now that everybody uses, and I don't really think people know the real definitions and meanings of them. But it clearly is, in terms of narcissists, a person that, as you mentioned, is coming into a relationship, maybe some roller coasters of emotions and pushing and pulling. And also, you pointed out, sometimes it's not overt, but covert. They actually may not exhibit any of those narcissistic traits initially or outwardly, but they do it covertly, right?
Oh, yeah. It's a very passive aggressive, very, very passive aggressive. And so if you don't have the skills to handle it and communicate with them properly and negotiate with them properly, you're never going to be able to get out of it. And so that's what I teach people how to do, how to negotiate with them. First, how to negotiate with them, how to create leverage, how to get out of it. And it's really more of a personal development. So how to have the mindset, how to become powerful, how to shift that dynamic, how to shift that power dynamic, and then ultimately become powerful enough to become a different person. It's a complete transformation.
So a person who's in a relationship with someone who is creating a toxic relationship, not an ideal person, again, personal, business, romantic, they need some skills that you teach. They need some information. They need some knowledge of what to do and how to change themselves so they can actually pull out of that relationship, empower themselves, and then move forward and attract and create better relationships that aren't toxic like the ones they had in the past, correct?
Yeah, so what I teach is I first teach them how to create real leverage. So I actually have AI in my program. So I've actually created my own AIs, which is my Magic Leverage AI. So it teaches them how to document. It actually teaches it creates documentation, and it takes their documentation and turns it into leverage and for their case and
Specifically for a divorce, right?
not necessarily. It can be in business litigation. It can be probate litigation. It can be any kind of case. And then, so I teach them how to negotiate, negotiation skills, communication skills, and for their cases, it could be any kind of negotiation. And then also how to take their power back. So I teach them communication skills. And then by the time they're finished with the negotiation, they also have transformed their lives too, because they've become a different person. They've really become the most powerful version of themselves that they've ever become.
Well, fantastic. This is a hot topic. People are talking about toxic relationships, narcissistic people, how to deal with all this, and you're right at the forefront, leading the way. Rebecca Zung, thanks very much for being my guest. It was a fascinating topic. I'm sure we'll talk again soon.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's been great. Love talking to you.
Terrific. You're great. We love having you on. I'm Kevin Trudeau. Thanks for watching. This is the Kevin Trudeau Show, Limitless. Until next time, see you at the top. If you loved this episode, if it lit a fire under you, then buckle up and dive into my episode, Lose Losers from Your Life. Are your friends holding you back? Blocking your blessings? How do you cut toxic ties? Or are toxic people really a gift? Wouldn't it be better? Wouldn't you be more empowered? Wouldn't you be at more cause over your environment if you could deal with any person, no matter how toxic they are, no matter how negative they are, and nobody has any effect on your emotional state?